Okay. So that was the answer key to this exercise, and you already have the answer keys online for this one. Let me share the book with you. All right. Now we're going to start with Chapter 8. Chapter 8 talks about irregular verbs. If you could go to page 62. Okay. So irregular verbs, they are verbs that are not conjugated by simply adding an S or ED. Irregular verbs change spelling when tense change. So usually we have verbs like, let's say, play, and then past simple would be played. And then if we add an S to the verb, we just have an S like this. Some other verbs are different. They are called irregular. For example, here we have normal verb, slap, slapped, step, stepped, had slapped, and had stepped. Now here, what did we do? Usually the verb is like this, slap. We take a look at the last three letters. We have in English something called consonant, and we have vowels. Vowels in English are 5, A, E, I, O, and U. While consonants are all the others, like B, C, D, F, etc. So we take a look at this word. We have the word slap. And then we see here, what do we have as the last letter? P. P is a consonant. What do we have before it? A, it's a vowel. Before it, L, it's a consonant. So now we have something called CVC, consonant, vowel, consonant. So when we have consonant, vowel, consonant at the end of the word, we have to double the final consonant, and then we can add ED. So the verb slap would be consonant, vowel, consonant. So we double the final consonant P, and then we add ED. Okay, so remember the rule. When we have CVC, consonant, vowel, consonant, we have to double the final consonant and then add ED. So we could do that when we talk about the past simple form of the verb, or even had slapped, the past perfect, the past participle form of the verb. Now, other kind of verbs are irregular. So they have a totally different word. Some letters might be the same, but usually it's a different pronunciation and some different letters. So here we have, for example, break. We have broke, drink, drank. This is the past form of the verb. Here we have broken, which is the past participle form. And again, we have drunk here. So usually, when you learn new verbs, or even the verbs that you know, it's a good idea to know the three forms. The first form in the present form, the second one, the past form, and then the third one, the past participle form, or some people call it verb 3. So always remember to say play, played, played, break, broke, broken, drink, drank, drunk, ride, rode, ridden, etc. You're going to have thousands of lists on the internet. Just write list of irregular verbs, and then you're going to see a lot of them.
Because it's hard to detect it.
Sorry?
I mean, the irregular verbs are hard to detect it because if you don't know if it irregular or regular, is it gonna be issue or problem?
It might be difficult for you in the writing and grammar. So for example, they underline this word and they say, for example, okay, let me write it here. If they say had broke, of course, you should know that if they underline it and say, if you say, for example, no change, it's correct. This is a problem. It should be had broken. And it's also important in the reading section. So when you read the sentence, you know that this is broke. So this is the past simple form of the verb. So you know that this sentence is in the past. So this might help you in answering some of the questions. All right. So let's go on. Irregular verbs. Changing irregular verbs to past tense or the had have tenses, or we call it past participle or verb 3, is not straightforward. An easy way to spot irregular verbs on the SAT is to look for an irregular verb alone or an irregular verb paired with had or have. So always remember that when we have had, like for example in past perfect, or have in present perfect, we usually have the past participle form. Again, they give you more examples here, like drive, drove, know, knew, or knew, British English, creep, crept. And again, you should know like it's drive, drove, driven. And then we have know, knew, known, creep, crept, crept. Here there's a tip that might be helpful. Anytime there is a had or have in front of an irregular verb, it changes its spelling to incorporate a U, M, or N. In the simplest terms, if you see an irregular verb with a U, M, or N in it, it must have had or have. So if you look here, usually, for example, drive, we have driven. It's an N in the end. Know, we have known. Again, we have an N. Sometimes we have a U, like drink, drunk. It's not a good idea to rely on this rule only. I think it's better to have the list of all irregular verbs. I'm sure you know a lot of them, and just try to memorize the ones that you don't know. Let's have more examples. By the time Jeffrey had drove to California, the Rocky Road ice cream stored in the trunk of his car was completely melted and inedible. Now we look at this sentence and we see what the problem is. Now here we have had. So after had, we have a verb. Here it should be, it's past perfect, so it should be the past participle or the third form of the verb. But as we know, drove is the second form, it's the past form of the verb. So here we have a problem. The verb drive is conjugated to drove to indicate past tense. But because there is a had next to it, we must change it to driven because it's the third form of the verb. So the correct example might be, by the time Jeffrey had driven to California, the Rocky Road ice cream, blah, blah, blah. All right. Now we have a note here. There are some exceptions. Guys, can you stop drawing, please? Thank you. Let's read the note together. There are some exceptions to the U, M, and N rule, but they are not tested on the SAT. So usually they give you the ones that have U, M, or N in them. But as I told you, it might be helpful for the reading section as well. So it's a good idea to memorize the lists. Again, we have another tip. Whenever you see had or have right before a verb, check that the verb is in the correct form. Refer to the list on the next page for an illustration of the principles. This list is not comprehensive, but it will give you a good foundation for checking this type of error in the future. So here we have a list. Okay, so you can start from here. This is a good list. And then maybe you could take at a more comprehensive list where you have all the irregular verbs. Okay, I'm not gonna waste your time now, but I just want you to try to memorize them for the infinitive form, and then the past tense, and the third form where we have had or has or have. So I would like you to try to study this at page 63. Note the common change in the third column. The verbs now have a U, M, or N.
Teacher, I have a question.
Yes.
On the drive word, can we put S for present simple? Drives or like that?
Of course, if you have he, she, or it before the verb in the present form, you have to. So in general, we say, for example, I drive. We have he drives.
I mean, because at first of grammar, you said you can't put ER or IES or S, but this is my point.
Yeah, we're talking about verbs, normal verbs. Normal verbs, we can have, we usually have it like this in the infinitive form. Unless we have he, she, and it, we have to use S. But I'm just saying that in some verbs it changes. But the general rule is like this. We use drive in the infinitive form, drives with he, she, and it. Okay. Before we start doing the activities, do we have any questions so far about irregular verbs? Okay, let's start with the activities then. So, using the strategies you learned on page 62, 63, try to fix the irregular verbs if necessary. So we might have some sentences with no change. Let's start with the first one. I should have knew that Henry was going to betray me. His shifty eyes were a dead giveaway.
Can I answer?
Yes, please.
The answer is new. You have to put known. Have known.
Mm-hmm. So why did you use have known?
Because we have a present perfect.
All right, cool. Thank you. Okay, let's take a look at others. I'm gonna do 2 and 3, and then maybe I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes to try the others. Okay, I'm gonna start with 2. Mickey told me that you had beat the principal in the student faculty tennis tournament. So again, here we have had, so we have the verb beat. If you look at the verb beat, we should have beaten. So here we say, Mickey told me that you had beaten. So in number 4, we said we should have known. And in number 2, we should have beaten. For number 3, Even though the sand castles that we built last summer have sunk into the ground, my memories of that idyllic vacation will never fade away. So
That's right.
even though the sand castles that we built last summer, we have sunk. So we'll take a look at sunk. So we have sink, sank, sunk. So we have sunk, so we don't have any problem with this. So it's true. Okay. Now for the others, I'm just gonna give you 3 minutes. Try to do it quickly. You can write your answers in the chat box, but don't press enter. Just wait for everybody to have a chance, and then I'll let you know when to press enter. Okay, thank you guys. All right, so let's do it together. Let's start with number 4. I would have wrote the letter if the stationery I wanted to use had been available. So here we have the word have wrote. So after have, we need to have written. Number 5, since Ananya is such a kind girl, I did not expect you to have spoke to her. Again, we have the verb speak, spoke, and then we should have spoken. Number 6, until 35 years ago, Sachin had always rode his bicycle to school. And again, here we have had. So we need to say ridden. Number 7, if you had froze the steak, it would not have gone bad so soon. So again, the verb phrase, we have to say frozen. Number 8, the students should have taken the extension that the professor offered them. Instead, they insisted on finishing on time with just a mediocre presentation. So we have should have, and after have we have taken. So this sentence is fine, no problem. Number 9, Janet decided that she needed to go to the bathroom only after the concert had began. So we have begin, past is began, but for the third form of the verb, we need to have begun. Last one, in his youth, Kenji, like his friends, had forsook his former lifestyle to pursue the freedom of living as a vagabond in California. So again, we just need to look at forsook. So we have forsake. So to forsake, it means to leave or abandon something. Forsook is past, so we have to say forsaken. Any questions so far?
It's clear,
No,
thank you.
No problem.
Okay, cool. Now again, this one is similar to the SAT. So I'm gonna try to do number 1 and 2, and then I'll give you time to try the others. We start with number 1. A few years ago, news magazine carried the story of a woman named Janet Bascom, who had forsook her everyday life. So we're just talking about this. So we have had, forsook is only the
Forsaken.
exactly.
Forsaken.
So the answer is C, forsaken. Okay, you cannot choose this, so I'm just gonna write C is correct. Number 2, forsaken her everyday life in a suburb of Denver. A few months into a protracted trip abroad, she writes a letter that explains. So what do you think we should have here?
Written. She has had.
Okay,
Has written.
so we have she has written, so this is present perfect. Or we say she had wrote. Is C correct?
No.
Okay, what should we have if we have C?
To be correct, she had written.
All right, so C is incorrect. Now, we have wrote. So what do you think? Do we have B or D?
I think B.
I think B, wrote, because it in the past.
Exactly. So when we have present perfect, it means there should be a connection between the present and the past. But here, we're just talking about a few years ago.
Yeah.
It happened and finished. So a few months into her trip, she wrote. So B is the correct answer. Okay, now we just have 3 to 8. Again, I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Write in the chat box without pressing enter. Okay, so they are mostly the same, but we have some differences in a couple of them. Okay, let's start. So we finished number 2. Let's go on. She wrote a letter that explained her unfulfilled desires, her longing to experience the violent jolt of a life of adventure. Indeed, Janet's journey seems to have took. So again, when we have, we cannot have took. So we need to have taken. So here we have seems to have taken. Why not, for example, has taken? Because we have to. So after to, we need to have infinitive form, and the infinitive form is have, not has. So let me write the answer here. We have D. Number 4. There, without a phone or a post office, she swam with the dolphins and laid in the sun. So swam is the third form of the verb swim. We have to use the second form. And the second form is swam, so the answer is B. Remember, we are talking about the past here. So number C, swims, is incorrect. And here we have had swum, past perfect. Past perfect is usually used when we have 2 verbs in the past. The first verb is past perfect and the other one is past simple. But here we just have 2 actions that happened and finished. So we just have swum, it should be swam. For 5, Janet drank coconut juice when possible. at times in energetic embrace of her new existence, even spring into action to catch a fish for dinner. So again, we have drunk, so we're talking about the past. Even spring into action. So spring is the first form of the verb, so no change, no change is incorrect. And then now we can have had sprung, springing, all will spring. What do you think is the correct answer?
I
It should
think
be
it's springing.
Springing.
B.
So here we don't have another subject. So we can say that this is another verb, spring. So we have to use the ing form here. So springing is correct. Let's take a look at 6. Into action to catch a fish for dinner. She had knew that her days would end like this. So here we have had knew, and this is the second form of the verb. So what is the answer?
Had known.
Exactly. So the answer should be B. 7. That her days would end like this. She would most likely have spoke. Again, spoke is the second form. What is the answer?
Spoken. Have spoken.
And that's C. Spoken
Teacher,
one.
which is have, because we have what or what?
Are you talking about number 7?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's asking about the difference between have and had.
The verb after would, it's infinitive or what?
The verb after would.
Yeah, she would most likely have. We should say should most likely has, not have.
No, when we have would, we should have the infinitive form of the verb. Which one is infinitive, have or has?
Have, yeah. I
Okay.
asked you.
Yeah, so we should say she would have spoken.
I get it.
Okay. All right. Let's take a look at 8. Perhaps to offer a slow and proper goodbye. As it was, she had flew halfway. Again, flew is the second form. What's the third form of the
Flown.
Number B.
Exactly.
Flown.
Okay. So that's it, guys, for irregular verbs. Any problem? Any question?
It's clear.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
I see. I think I have some activities. If I find some activities for this one, I'm going to put it on the WhatsApp group to do more exercise. Okay. Let's move now to chapter 9. We talk about verb tenses. It's somehow connected to the one we talked about before, because we're still going to be looking at some tenses here. Page 68. Okay, verb tenses, lesson 9. There are a multitude of tenses in the English language. It is not necessary for the purpose of the SAT to learn and or memorize every single tense. The best way to master verb tense questions is to recognize when you are being tested on tense. I disagree to an extent. I think it's very important for the SAT to learn some tenses because this is going to help us a lot. Of course, if you saw here, it was very important for us to know what we have after would. We need infinitive. And if we're talking about the past, so here we should have only past simple, not past perfect. So it is somehow important. Okay, so when you see the following references to time in a sentence, use your basic knowledge of tense to check for an error. So here, usually they give you, for example, some timed years, 1969, 19th century, dates like on October 6th, 1999, time 2 p.m., 15 hours, or sometimes they give you some tense words. So we have the year, later, after, since, yesterday, tomorrow, ago, past, and future. So looking at these, they might be somehow an indication to what kind of tense we're going to use. So if you're talking about, for example, 1999, and we're talking about this now, so most probably we have past simple, past perfect, or past continuous. So we have some of the past or narrative verbs. If we have, again here, if we have a reference in the future, so now it's 1 p.m. and then we say 2 p.m. So we need to say will, going to, or any other form talking about the future. Again, if we have since, for example, usually we use present perfect when we have since. We have yesterday, past, tomorrow, future, etc. Okay. Let's have the first verb, has or have. When you see has or have before the verb, it should refer to an action or condition that began in the past, has continued to the present, and perhaps may continue into the future. So this is usually called present perfect. So what is special about the present perfect? In the present perfect, we have a connection between the past and the present. It means something that started in the past, maybe is still continuing now, or maybe it has an effect now, or it might continue in the future. So there's always a connection between the past and the present. So here, for example, I went to see the fireworks since I was 4 years old. Okay, now here we have since. And we said that usually when we have since, we have to use present perfect. So here we have I went, which is just past. So we change it to make it present perfect. We say, I have been going to see fireworks since I was 4 years old. And then here we have, and then we have present perfect, but it's present perfect continuous. So we have been and then going. So remember, when we have or has, it's usually present perfect, either continuous or simple. And then we have to use been and verb plus ing. Let me just write it here. So for present perfect simple, you need to have a subject and then have or has, and then you have the past participle form of the verb, or verb 3. Or sometimes we have present perfect continuous, and then we need to have a subject plus have or has plus been. And been is the third form or past participle form of verb to be. And then you have a verb, and then you have ing. Okay. Now we move to had. Again, when you see had before the verb, it should refer to an event or condition that occurred prior to another event in the past. So when we have had and the verb after it, usually we're talking about past perfect. What's special about past perfect? We have two actions in the past. Two actions in the past, one happening before the other. First action is past perfect, and second action is past simple or continuous. So as a general rule, we have two actions in the past. The first action that happened in the past is past perfect, and then the first action is past perfect, and the second action is past simple. Let's take a look. By the time George organized his closet, his mother berated him about his filthy room. It should be, by the time George organized his closet, his mother had berated him about his filthy room. So here we have two actions in the past. The first one is had berated him. It means like she rebuked him. She said, your room is very dirty, and that's why he organized it. So remember that after had, we need the past participle form of the verb, verb 3. For past tense, when the sentence establishes past tense, verbs describing action should not end in ing. Let's take a look here. Here we have 50 years ago, Isabella marrying a rich banker just for his money. Now, here we have 50 years ago. So here we have a reference to the past. Here we have Isabella, which is the subject. And now marrying is a verb in the ing form. So this is like, we call it an infinite verb. We don't know what tense it has. We don't know whether we're talking about past, present, or future. That's why we need to change it to married, because we know here we have 50 years ago, so we need to use past simple. So when you need to show that the tense is past, present, etc., don't leave it like this in the ing form. We have a subject before it, and it's talking about the past, so you have to use past simple. Again, for past tense, if you see an underlined verb, let me just have the spotlight again. If you see an underlined verb and you are unsure if you should change the tense, use the context of the rest of the sentence to clarify the tense of the verb in question. For example, we have Mega arrives at the train station just when the ticket booth closed. So we need to focus on the context here. Context means the words surrounding the word we are talking about. So here, for example, we have when the ticket booth closed. So it means we have something that is talking about the past. That's why if we have the verb arrives, this is present. And then when the ticket booth closed, we're talking about the past. So there's a problem here. So we can change the verb arrives to arrived. So she arrived at the train station just when the ticket booth closed. And now it's fine. Let's read the tip. The word being is often wrong. Jonathan being remembered because of his valiant efforts during the hurricane rescue, and his legacy will endure. Now here, of course, is not, look, when they say often, often is different than always. It means most of the time, when they give you the ing form of the verb, it's incorrect, but not always. But if you look here, Jonathan being remembered. Now, if we have a sentence like this, as I said, it's called non-finite. It doesn't show which tense we are talking about. Because here remembered is in the past participle form. And being, it doesn't have a clear tense here. So this remembered might be past simple, might be past perfect, might be present perfect. We don't know. So we take a look at the context. Jonathan being remembered because of his valiant efforts during the hurricane rescue, and his legacy will endure. I mean, Jonathan was a big hero in the hurricane rescue, and everybody will remember his name in the future, because here it says his legacy means his fame, he's going to be famous for this. That's why now we know that with using the context, we know that we're talking about the future. So instead of being, we have to say will be remembered. So in general, ing is wrong, but that's often, it's not always the case. Okay, so that's about the grammar rule. Let's recap quickly. I think you have to have a good idea about tenses for the SAT. If you have or has, it's usually present perfect, where you have a connection between the past and the present. If it's present perfect simple, you have subject, have or has, and the third form of the verb. If it's past perfect continuous, it's usually used with action verbs. We say subject, have, has, been, plus verb ing. If we have had, it means we have past perfect. We use it when we have two actions in the past. The first action is usually past perfect and the other is past simple. Again, we have past tenses. When it shows us clearly with the word go, we shouldn't just have the verb with the ing form. We should have the verb in the past simple form. Again, here, sometimes you need to look, you don't have, for example, here we have 50 years ago, it's clear. Sometimes we don't have a clear reference to the date or time. In this case, we need to look at the context. The context shows us here that closed is in the past, so we need to use past simple here. Being is usually or often wrong. You need, again, to take a look at the context and try to correct it, see if it's past, present, or future. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to repeat. We're talking about tenses in general. When we have or has, it means we're talking about present perfect, which means there should be a connection between the past and the present. For example, if I say, I have been waiting for my friend for 10 minutes, it means I started waiting in the past and I'm still waiting now. There is still a connection in the present. Sometimes we can use present perfect simple with subject, have or has, and past participle. Like, for example, we can say, I have known him for 1 year. So here we have the subject I, we have, and then we have known. Past perfect continuous, as we said, for example, I have been waiting for her for 15 minutes. So I have known him. I started knowing him 1 year ago, and I still know him, a connection between past and present. I have been waiting. I started waiting before, and I'm still waiting now. When we have had, we're talking about past perfect. So we have two actions in the past. The first is past perfect, and the second is past simple. Let me give you an example. Okay, so when he arrived, we had already had dinner. So we have two actions here in the past. He arrived and we had dinner. Now, which one was first? The first one was us having finished dinner. And then when we finished, he came. So it's the second one. That's why the first action happening is past perfect, had dinner. And the second one, he arrived, we just have past simple. Okay, And we also said here that to use past simple, sometimes it's clear with some references. Like here we have 50 years ago. So we shouldn't leave it with ing, it should be ed. And then here, sometimes we don't have a clear time reference, but we look at the context. The other verb is in the past, which shows us that the whole situation is in the past. So we have to use arrived. Being is often wrong. You need to take a look at the sentences to see what the problem is. Okay, any questions?
Teacher, what's the difference between present perfect continuous and present perfect continuous sample?
Okay.
Can you remind me, please?
Yes, of course. As we said, for present perfect simple, usually, but not always, we focus more on either state verbs or we focus on completed actions. We focus on state verbs like I have known him for 1 year. So here the verb know is not an action verb, so we don't use ing with it. So that's why we use have known. Or a complete action. I'll write another example. I have done my homework. So here, I started in the past and now I finished in the present. So it's a completed action. So I can use present perfect simple here. But for present perfect continuous, if I am focusing on the action, so we have action verbs, and my focus is not about whether I completed the action or not. It's about the action itself. So when I focus on the action, like I'm focusing on the action of waiting. So I've been waiting.
Infinitive action?
Sorry?
Is it infinitive action? I mean, habit in past and still carry on at present. And we don't know what will be happen at the future.
Exactly. Okay, is it fine now? All right. So let's start doing the activities. While doing the activities, we see if we have any problems. Okay. Here, let's read the example first. Using the strategies, we need to fix the verb tense if necessary, as usual. Let's take a look at number 1. So in number 1, we have in 1979, the Islamic Republic of Iran being established. We said that usually, not always, when we have being, it means we're having a problem. And again, here, we need to use past simple because 1979, it means it happened and finished. And remember here, we should have past simple, but be careful. The Islamic Republic of Iran didn't establish itself. People established it. That's why we need to use passive. So
was
here,
established.
exactly. Cool. I'll give you another example. Sandy regretted his decision to ignore his parents' curfew. When he gets home late, they were waiting at the door with a list of punishments. So here we have regretted. If you look at the context, we have past. And then here, they were waiting. And here we have when.
When he got.
So here we have a problem. That's why we have to stick to the past and use got. Okay, one last example. Number 3. After Olga had thrown me out of her apartment, I thought that perhaps I should not have tried to bathe my pet goat in her shower. So let's take a look. After Olga had thrown me out of her apartment, I thought. So we have two actions. She had thrown me out of her apartment is the first action. Then after this, I thought. So I had this idea after this, so it's fine. First action, past perfect. Second action, past simple. And then here we have should not. We have, and then we have the third form of the verb, tried, no problem, to bathe my pet goat in the shower. So in this case, number 3 is correct. Okay, for number 4 to 10, I'm just gonna give you 3 minutes only. Write in the chat box and don't press enter. Thank you guys, let's go on. Okay, so number 4. Fiona was writing her novel for 9 hours straight, and she is still going strong. Now, here we have was writing here for novel, and she is still going strong. So here, if you say was writing, it means there's a reference to the past only. But here, we still have a connection between the past and the present. So that's why we need to change it. We need to say has been writing. Number 5. In 1969, the famous Woodstock concert attracting hordes of people. Again, here we have attracting. And we said, usually when we have the ing form of the verb, it's often wrong, not all the time, because here we have 1969. So we have a clear reference to the past. So that's why we just need to use past simple. So we have to say attracted. Number 6, Phil only returned my call after I have fallen asleep. So here, return, so we're talking about the past. After I have fallen asleep. So here we have two actions in the past. We have returned and we have fallen. Have fallen happened first. So what do we need to do, guys?
I have fallen.
Exactly. So remember, guys, past perfect means when we have two verbs, the first the first one is past perfect. Yes, I am.
Can we say Phil only had returned my call after fall asleep? I mean, put the past continuous, sorry, the past perfect and present simple. But I'm sorry, the past simple.
Okay, I am. Which action happened first? We have two actions, return and fall asleep. Which one happened first? Because if you look here, Phil only returned my call after I had fallen asleep. It means first I had fallen asleep, and then after this, he returned my call. So now the first action is had fallen, not returned. So we cannot say had returned because return is the second verb and it shouldn't be past perfect.
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't see after closely.
No, it's okay. And please don't say sorry. Number 7, we are happy to have you in our home, but tomorrow, while we are preparing dinner, we hope you did the laundry. Let's take a look here. So we are happy to have you in our home, but tomorrow, reference to the future, while we are preparing dinner. So tomorrow, while we are preparing dinner, so we have present continuous with a future reference. We hope you did. We have past. So it's a problem. What is the answer?
Will do.
So we have to use will do. Number 8. I refused to leave the casino so soon after arriving. It was only 20 minutes. So, I refuse to leave the casino so soon after arriving, and then it was only 20 minutes.
I refused.
Sorry?
I refused.
Okay, we could say I refused to leave the casino so soon after arriving. Then again, we have it had only been 20 minutes. So if we need to use past simple, I refused. And then we have another verb. It was only 20 minutes. Which one happened first? 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Because I was there for 20 minutes and then I refused to leave.
Yes.
So if we need to change refuse, we have to say I refused. But again, we also need to change it was only. We say it had only.
It has only. Yes. Thank
Or
you.
if you want to keep talking about the present, you say I refuse. You need to use present perfect. You say it has only been. The same idea as the first one, but the first one we have past, so it's past perfect. Here we have present, so it's present perfect. Both are correct, but if we have to change one verb only, we should choose the second one, has only been.
Thank you.
Okay, now next one. Matilda plans to arrive at 4 o'clock when the dancers perform their ballet routine. Okay.
Well performed.
Yep. So here we have plans to arrive. So when you plan to do something, we
It's in
have
future.
exactly. So here we have performed. What should we write? What's the answer?
Well performed.
Exactly. Number 10. If you were so concerned about Lauren's decision to get a tattoo of a jack-o'-lantern on her neck, then maybe you should have said something before she did so. Let's take a look. If you were so connected or concerned, sorry, about Lauren's decision to get a tattoo, etc., then maybe you should have said. So here we have past, if you were so concerned, and then here we have should have said. This is the past form. Okay, let's do it together. So we finished number 2. Now let's move to number 3. So here we said we have to say can. Such recording can be detrimental to real education and real emotional health. What occur for the users of such technology is that they merely record and then forget, etc. Okay, now here we have what. Usually when we start with what, we need to have a singular form of the verb. And here we have to have singular form. So what do you think the answer is?
Answer is D.
Yes, it is. So for example, we say what is the name? So we have a singular form of the verb after it. So here it's like what occurs. It means, for example, we change it to say it. It occurs. That's why D is the correct answer. Go on. That merely record. Okay, let's start with for instance. For instance, a picture of Mount Fuji becomes just that, a picture to be uploaded for others to see. Our active roles is no longer to witness, to feel, etc. Now here we have our active roles is the subject, and then we have the verb, which is singular here, of the plural. So what do you think the answer is?
Answer will be B. R.
Exactly. So remember, when we have a plural subject, we need to have a plural verb. Our feelings come not from what we see independently, but instead are defined by people's reactions to the images we have distributed. In the future, what was in front of us at first hand will not matter as much as what will be on some acquaintance's screen. So for number 5, we have in the future. So we have a reference about the future. And here we have was in the past. If you look at the options, which one has a future reference?
Will be number C.
Will be.
Exactly. So C is the correct answer. Let's move on. The question remains, if we knew in the past that our perceptions of the world could be so altered and so cheapened, would we have created this technology? So here we have if. And you know that when we use if, okay, that was stupid. When we use if, we're talking about conditionals. So here we have the first part, the if clause, and then here we have the second part. Would we have created? So this is in English called third conditional.
It's gonna be had known.
Cool. So here we have to use D. But let me write the formula for you. Let me write it here. So we have third conditional. So we have if plus past perfect. And then in the other part, we say would plus have plus the third form or the past participle form of the verb. Okay, we're done with the tenses. Do we have any question or problem?
No. It's clear.
Okay, Mohammed, everybody had a connection problem, but I think it's fine now. But anyways, it's all recorded, so you can just go back and check. If you have any question, you can ask me next class. Okay, I think we can have a 10-minute break just to refresh our minds, and we can have hopefully one chapter after it. So come back at 5:32. Okay, so chapter 10, idioms. Let's get started. An idiom is simply the customary way of saying a particular phrase. The idioms on the SAT should not be confused with colloquial expressions such as all ears or across the board. Instead, an idiomatic error occurs when the preposition is used incorrectly. So as we said, we're not talking about some idioms, like when somebody says, I need to tell you something, you say, I'm all ears. It means I'm attentive and listening to you. No, we're just talking about some other kinds of errors called idiomatic errors, especially we're talking about prepositions. Okay. Now the formula, for example, we have a preposition plus a phrase, or we have a preposition alone. So sometimes we have, for example, when I say listen, so usually we need to say to. When we have the mall, it's a place, so we need to say at the mall or in the mall. And we have some other prepositions like from, of, etc. Let's take a look. Idiomatic errors. The best way to master idiomatic errors on the SAT is to keep a list of the idioms, prepositions, and prepositional phrases that you come across in any SAT practice test. Let's have an example. She was arguing against her mother. Now, the problem with idiomatic errors, guys, that there is no rule about this. So every word is different, and every word might have a different preposition. How can we study them? We have some lists of prepositions. We call them dependent prepositions. It means they are usually used with another word. We're going to have some lists. Whenever you have time, you can take a look at it. And then in general, whatever you have, you are reading or listening to something, when you come across this, try to make notes of that. So in English, we don't say argue against somebody. In English, we say argue with somebody. There's no rule. It's fixed. You have to remember it like this. When you come across an idiom that is not on your list, use the written idiom in 3 short and simple sentences in your head to see which preposition you use most often. If it is a different preposition than the one written, you may be looking at the idiom error. Still remember to follow the format. Okay, here they say if there's an incorrect preposition, try to use it in 3 sentences. For example, for my birthday, my parents insisted about taking me to dinner. Now, here they say, you try to say the correct preposition. They insisted on driving, she insisted on paying, he insisted on opting. I don't really agree with this rule. I think it's better just to try different prepositions, because when you try more than one preposition, and then if you have come across this word before, it's stored somewhere in your brain. So when you try it with different prepositions, when you come to the right preposition, sometimes it feels that it clicks and you remember it. So you say insist, insist in, insist about, insist against, insist with, insist on. Okay, so maybe if you have come across it before, it will click that on is the correct answer. So in English, we say, my parents insisted on. And then after it, we usually have verb plus ing. So far we have argue with somebody, insist on something or doing something. As we said, we have hundreds of these. So we say, for example, okay, let me give you one example. If I say, I am interested football. What's the preposition?
I'm interested in.
Exactly. So is there a rule about this? No. Interested in, insist on, argue with.
But sometimes we say interested at, or it's always in.
I'm not sure. Can you give me an example? Like the same one?
Like I heard it sometimes, like somebody said interested at.
As far as I know, it's incorrect. I'm gonna double check if it's used, but I don't think so. I'm gonna check if it's used. I'll let you know next class. But for now, we should always have in.
Teacher?
Yep.
Can we use with the argument with? I agree with you. I disagree with you. Should we use with the argument, or you are want to accept for something?
Yeah, exactly. This is what I mean, Ayhan. We don't have one rule for this. For example, we say agree with, insist in, have an argument with. So every word has a different preposition.
But our lesson about the idioms, for example, we are at same boat, the ship has sailed, for example. I know the idiom like that.
Yes, that's why at the beginning I said here, instead, an idiomatic error occurs when the preposition is used incorrectly. So here they say, on the SAT, you should not be confused with such expressions. So I know the lesson's name title is a bit confusing. Forget about the title. We're just focusing in this part now, we're focusing on prepositions, okay?
The main idea of the lesson, we have to correct the idioms.
Yes, we call it idiomatic error. Forget about it. Let's call it prepositions, okay?
Okay.
All right. Let's go on. Colloquial speech errors. Colloquial speech means somehow informal speech. The SAT will occasionally use colloquial speech or slang to hide an error. Why do they use this? Because they know, for example, students watch movies, series, listen to songs, and they are exposed to a lot of informal language. So maybe when they read the sentence, they think, yeah, I've heard this before, so it might be correct. But SAT is an academic test, which means that we shouldn't have informal, colloquial, or slang. So that's why you need to be careful. Let's have an example of that. She should have gone to the market herself if she was that hungry. If you are talking informally, you're chatting with your friend or you hear it somewhere, people use should of, but grammatically it's incorrect. So if we say she should have gone, we know that after should, we should have a verb in the infinitive form. And then we have gone, past participle, so that's why we need to use have. So we either say should have gone or should have gone. But because in connected speech, we say should have, so some people say when they read it, it's, she should have gone, so maybe it's correct. But no, should have is apostrophe VE or should have. So just be careful with some slang or colloquial expressions. Following the principle explained above, when you see should have, could have, or would have, they are wrong. Because we have should have, and we have could have, and then we have would have. So the pronunciation is just of, but we shouldn't say of, of, the preposition. We should have.
Is this about the slang language, not it?
Yes. So, guys, remember, it's not clearly about the idioms as we know them. Here, we're focusing on prepositions or dependent prepositions, and here we're focusing on slang and colloquial or informal language. Okay, so for now, forget about idioms. Any questions so far before we start the activities? All right. Let's start with the activities and have a couple of examples. Using these strategies you learned on page 74, 75, complete the idiomatic phrase. Jonathan was familiar social media and digital marketing strategies. Any idea about the answer?
Jonathan was familiar with, I think.
Do you agree with Yusuf, or do we have different answers? All right.
Yes, familiar with it.
So is there a rule about this? No, it's just that we have to memorize it. When we have familiar, usually we have with. I'm familiar with something. I'm gonna do 2 or 3 examples. First one, the defendant was accompanied 2 police officers.
By. Accompanied by.
Thank you. Number 2, I refuse to be held responsible, something I didn't do. What do you think?
Of.
Responsible for.
Responsible for.
Yes, thank you guys. So we say responsible for. Let's move on. She has a tendency
to. She has tendency to.
Thank you. Okay. This is an easy one. I'm just going to give you 2 minutes. Try to do it on the chat box without pressing enter. Okay, cool. Before we go on, let me just show this. I think I forgot to resume the sharing. So I'll just go over this quickly. He was convinced of, inconsistent with, celebrated for, criticized for, or accused of, if we had accused, prefer something to or over something else, something is similar to something else, and somebody complained about something. And here we said participate in, and you experience something by seeing and away from. Let's do number 4. It took me a little while to understand exactly how an Alvin Ailey piece is meant to be interpreted, in contrast to a traditional long ballet such as Swan Lake. Now, we have in contrast, oh, sorry, I'm doing number 5. Let me go on. So we have in contrast to, for number 5. What's the correct answer?
No change.
Thank you. So in English, we say similar to and in contrast to. So for number 5, we have A, no change. Okay, sorry I skipped 4. Let's go back to it. Away from my hometown, presenting a repertoire of works based by both African American. I think you see this a lot in movies. We say it's based on. Thank you. Say it's based on a true story, for example. Okay, let's have number 6 and 7. However, it soon became clear to me that everything in an alley routine has a purpose. Now, each set of dancers refers at historical or cultural. Again, when we say refer, we need to use
Refer to.
thank you. And number 7, a performance by different movements. Let's read from the beginning. Perhaps the most cogent expression of his artistic vision is the dance composition Revelations, which is regarded as an Alvin Ailey masterpiece. A performance by different movements, revelations, etc. What do you think the answer should be here?
I think it should be was.
So here we say a performance with different movements. So it's a performance by, usually a performance by actors or artists or performance. So we need people. But here we have different movements. That's why we cannot choose by. We have to say with. Okay, we're good. Any questions? Okay, so please, guys, today we talked about 3 topics. Take a look at them. Try to do some exercises on the internet. Thank you, guys. See you on Thursday.